First contact with the void. Fleet Commander Tixtal of the Xeraxian Exploration Force stood motionless on the bridge of the Stellar Seeker, his crystalline eyes fixed on the impossible sight before him. Where their quantum sensors had promised an empty system perfect for colonization, they instead found a vast artificial constellation, thousands upon thousands of derelict ships stretching from horizon to horizon. Analysis complete, Commander, announced First Observer Kelleria, her voice carrying the distinctive harmonic overtones of their species. The vessels appear to be of diverse origin. We've identified crafts from at least 30 different civilizations, including, she paused, mandibles clicking in disbelief, including several thought to be merely legendary. The Xeraxian fleet had halted at the system's edge, their 12 ships maintaining perfect formation despite the gravitational complexity of their surroundings. Around them, the derelict vessels hung in elegant arrangements, their positions too precise to be random. Some were ancient beyond measure, their hulls etched by millennia of micro-impacts, while others seemed nearly pristine, as if they had been parked mere decades ago. Signs of life? Tixtal asked, his secondary hearts beating an irregular rhythm of anticipation and unease. None aboard the vessels themselves, reported Second Observer Mintax. However, we're detecting significant activity from a station near the system's single habitable planet. It appears to be maintaining these ships. Tixtal chittered thoughtfully. The Xeraxian Exploration Force had encountered many wonders in their centuries of expansion, but nothing like this. Each derelict was positioned with mathematical precision, creating vast three-dimensional patterns that boggled the mind. More curious still was the complete absence of debris. In a normal ship graveyard, collisions and decay would have created clouds of wreckage. Here, even the smallest fragments appeared to be carefully collected and preserved. Incoming transmission, announced Communications Officer Vixnil. Origin, the Central Station. Language, it's broadcasting in multiple formats, including Universal Standard. Put it through, Tixtal ordered, straightening his ceremonial carapace. A calm, deep voice filled the bridge. Greetings, visitors. You have entered humanity's MothYard. Please maintain your current position and prepare to receive docking instructions. We welcome peaceful observation of our work here, but any attempted salvage operations will be met with immediate response. The bridge crew exchanged glances. Humans, the primitive species that had emerged from their home system barely 3 centuries ago. How had they come to be custodians of such an extraordinary place? This is Fleet Commander Tixtal of the Xeraxian Exploration Force, he responded. We mean no disrespect to your MothYard. We simply seek to understand its purpose. There was a pause before the reply came. Purpose is best understood through direct observation, Commander. If you're willing, we invite you and a small delegation to dock at Gateway Station. Our keeper will explain everything. Tixtal studied the massive station through the main viewport. Its architecture was distinctly human, functional rather than aesthetic, with none of the sweeping curves favored by older spacefaring races. Yet there was something oddly beautiful about its utilitarian design, the way it seemed to cradle the nearest derelicts like precious artifacts. First Observer Kelleria, Second Observer Mintax, you'll accompany me, Tixtal decided. The rest of the fleet will maintain position and standard alert status. The journey to Gateway Station in their diplomatic shuttle was surreal. As they drew closer to the facility, they passed between rows of capital ships that dwarfed their vessel. Tixtal recognized the distinctive architecture of the Arcturian Empire, whose fall had preceded his species' emergence into space. Nearby hung the biomechanical hives of the Engsley Collective, their organic components somehow preserved despite the vacuum of space. Gateway Station's docking procedures were precise and efficient. As their shuttle touched down in a cavernous bay, Tixtal noticed human maintenance crews working on various derelicts through massive observation windows. Their movements were careful, almost reverent, as they documented and preserved these ancient vessels. The station's artificial gravity was calibrated perfectly for their species, an unexpectedly thoughtful touch. As they emerged from their shuttle, they were greeted by a tall human female in a dark uniform adorned with unfamiliar symbols. "Welcome to Gateway Station," she said, inclining her head slightly. "I am Senior Keeper Isabella Reyes. Before we proceed with formal introductions, I must ask, have you lost any ships in combat? Any crews who never returned from deep space missions?" The question caught Tixtal off guard. Yes, he admitted, thinking of the Void Seeker and her crew, lost during their species' first encounters with the quantum storms of the Carina Nebula. "Many species have." Keeper Reyes nodded solemnly. "Then you already understand part of why we're here. Please, follow me. The Keeper's Tower offers the best view of our work, and there we can discuss humanity's most sacred duty to the galaxy." As they followed her through the station's corridors, Tixtal noticed that every human they passed moved with the same careful precision he'd observed in the maintenance crews. There was no wasted motion, no casual behavior. Even their footsteps seemed deliberately placed, as if they walked on hallowed ground. "You're wondering why humans," Keeper Reyes said as they entered a lift. "Why the galaxy's youngest spacefaring race was chosen to maintain this place." She smiled slightly. "The answer lies in our history. You see, long before we reached the stars, humans had a peculiar obsession with preserving the memory of those who came before." The lift doors opened to reveal the Keeper's Tower, and Tixtal's question about humanity's role died in his throat. Through the tower's transparent walls, the full scope of the MothYard was finally visible. The derelict ships were not randomly arranged. They formed a vast, three-dimensional mandala, with vessels of similar origins grouped together in intricate patterns that spoke of both artistic vision and deep respect for their original crews. "This," Keeper Reyes said softly, "is humanity's gift to the galaxy. We remember, we preserve, we honor those who ventured into the void and never returned. And now, Commander Tixtal, let me tell you why your arrival here today was not a coincidence." The Keeper's Tale. Keeper Isabella Reyes led the Ziraxian delegation through Gateway Station's Memorial Hall, where holographic displays showed the faces of thousands of species whose vessels now rested in the MothYard. The crystalline walls seemed to pulse with a soft, ambient light that cast no shadows, creating an atmosphere of timeless reverence. "The first ship arrived 300 years ago," she explained, stopping before a massive window that overlooked a section of preserved battleships. It was an Aldebaran warship, the Twilight Sentinel, found drifting in the Carina Nebula. Its crew had sacrificed themselves to save a colony from quantum pirates, but their final act ensured their ship remained intact. First observer Kelleria moved closer to the window, her sensor arrays quietly recording the ancient vessel. But how did humans become involved? Your species had barely achieved interstellar flight at that time. A slight smile crossed Reyes's face. "That's where the story becomes interesting. The Twilight Sentinel wasn't discovered by humans. It found us." She gestured, and a holographic display materialized in the center of the hall, showing Earth as it had appeared 3 centuries earlier. A massive ship, clearly of alien design, appeared in orbit around the planet. The Twilight Sentinel's AI had been given one final command by its dying crew: find worthy guardians for their legacy. It spent 50 years searching the galaxy, evaluating species not by their technological advancement, but by how they honored their dead. When it found Earth, with our countless cemeteries, memorials, and traditions of remembrance, it recognized something unique. Tixtal's secondary hearts fluttered with understanding. "You were chosen because you remember. More than that," Reyes continued, leading them deeper into the station. "We obsess over remembering. Every human civilization, no matter how primitive, has created monuments to the dead. We preserve battlefields centuries after the last shot was fired. We maintain tombs for rulers who died thousands of years ago." The Twilight Sentinel saw this and recognized that we would treat every derelict ship not as salvage, but as a sacred trust. They entered a vast chamber filled with artifacts recovered from the preserved ships. Personal effects, ship logs, and fragments of lives cut short in the void. Each item was carefully displayed, with holographic annotations providing context and history. After the Twilight Sentinel made contact, other derelict ships began arriving. First a handful, then dozens, then hundreds. Some were guided by their own AIs. Others were brought to us by species who recognized what we were building here. The Galactic Council initially opposed our role, arguing that such a young species couldn't be trusted with this responsibility. But the ships kept coming. Second Observer Mintax, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. The patterns we observed from orbit, they're not random arrangements. No, Rice confirmed. Each ship is positioned according to its culture's beliefs about the afterlife. The Arcturian vessels form spiral patterns because they believe souls traveled in cosmic spirals after death. The Enxithi ships are arranged in organic clusters, reflecting their belief in collective consciousness even after death. She led them to a secure chamber deep within the station. The room was small but somehow felt vast, its walls covered in flowing script from 100 alien languages. At its center stood a simple pedestal supporting what appeared to be an ancient logbook. "This is the heart of memory," Rice said softly. "Every ship that enters the MothYard is recorded here, along with everything we know about its crew. Names, stories, final messages, anything that helps preserve who they were. We have teams of historians and cynoanthropologists working constantly to learn more about each vessel and its people." Tixtal approached the pedestal, noting that the book was actually a sophisticated holographic display designed to look like physical pages. "How many?" he asked. "At current count, just over 3 million ships, representing roughly 12 billion souls from 47,000 species." Rice's voice carried both pride and solemnity. "And now we come to why you're here, Commander." She touched a control panel, and a new hologram appeared. A Xeraxian exploration vessel, its distinctive crystalline hull unmistakable. Tixtal felt his heart stop. "The Void Seeker," he whispered. "Found drifting in the Carina Nebula 2 standard years ago," Rice confirmed. "We've preserved her, Commander. Would you like to see?" Tixtal's crystalline eyes dimmed with emotion. The Void Seeker had been lost during his first command, her crew of 300 souls given up for dead in the quantum storms. He had carried that weight for 20 years. "Her crew manifests?" he asked, barely able to form the words. "Complete, along with their personal logs, including final entries. We've learned their songs of remembrance, Commander. We can sing them as they were meant to be sung." The Xeraxian delegation fell silent, understanding now why the Stellar Seeker's quantum sensors had guided them to this seemingly empty system. Their lost ship had called them home. "This is why we maintain the MothYard," Rice said quietly. "Not just to preserve the ships, but to ensure that every species in the galaxy has a place to mourn, to remember, and to find closure. The void takes much from us all, but here nothing is truly lost." As if to emphasize her words, a soft chime echoed through the chamber. The sound of another derelict ship arriving in the MothYard, another crew's legacy entrusted to humanity's eternal vigil. The warning klaxons shattered the sacred silence of Gateway Station, just as Keeper Rice was preparing to escort the Xeraxian delegation to the Void Seeker. Emergency lights pulsed along the corridors in urgent patterns, and the station's AI spoke with uncharacteristic urgency. "Multiple unauthorized vessels detected. Salvage configurations. Approaching restricted Zone 7. Weapons active." Race's demeanor transformed instantly from solemn curator to battlefield commander. "This is why we maintain more than memories," she said, leading them swiftly to the station's command center. "Some see only profit in these halls of remembrance." The command center hummed with controlled chaos as human operators coordinated their response. Holographic displays showed a fleet of 15 ships approaching the outer edges of the MothYard, their designs marking them as belonging to the Carax Consortium, notorious scavengers who stripped derelict vessels for advanced technology. "This is Gateway Station to approaching vessels," a communications officer broadcast. You are entering protected space. The MothYard is sanctioned by Galactic Council Resolution 7249 as a memorial site. Reverse course immediately. The response came in the form of weapons fire, a warning shot that passed between two ancient Arcturian dreadnoughts. The Karax commander's voice followed, dripping with contempt. This is Salvage Master Vex. Your memorial is the greatest stockpile of advanced technology in known space. The dead have no need of it. Stand down, or we'll add your station to our collection. Commander Tixtal stepped forward, his crystalline form reflecting the emergency lights. Allow us to assist. The Stellar Seeker and her fleet stand ready. But Keeper Rise held up a hand, her eyes fixed on the tactical displays. Watch, she said softly. Watch why humanity was chosen for more than just our capacity to remember. The space around the Karax fleet suddenly blazed with light as hundreds of previously invisible defense platforms decloaked. Each platform was small, hardly larger than a shuttle, but they moved with incredible coordination, weaving complex patterns around the intruding vessels. Final warning. Raya's broadcast. These are not simply graves you threaten. They are monuments to sacrifice, to courage, to the price paid for civilization itself. Leave, or learn why humanity guards its honored dead with the same ferocity that we remember them. The Karax responded by opening fire on the nearest defense platform. The shot passed straight through it. Holograms. First observer Kelleria breathed in admiration. Partly, Rise confirmed as she activated a secondary control console. We learned from every ship in our care, including their battle tactics. The Arcturians were masters of holographic warfare. The Enxi understood organic camouflage. The Temporal Dynasty knew how to bend light itself. She paused, allowing herself a grim smile. But the actual defense platforms, those are very real and very human. The holograms vanished, revealing the true defense platforms in entirely different positions. Before the Karax could reorient their weapons, precisely targeted electromagnetic pulses struck their ships, bypassing shields designed to stop kinetic and energy weapons. Ship after ship went dark, their systems overloaded by attacks they hadn't believed possible from such a young species. We studied every battle that brought ships to our care, Rise explained as the Karax fleet drifted helplessly. We learned how they died so we could prevent others from desecrating their rest. Humanity's gift isn't just remembrance. It's the will to defend what we remember. Recovery ships emerged from Gateway Station, moving to secure the disabled vessels. The human crews worked with practiced efficiency, knowing exactly how to neutralize any remaining threats without causing unnecessary damage. What will happen to them? Second observer Mintax asked, watching the Karax crews being evacuated. They'll be given a choice, Rice said. Work in the MothYard, learning the stories of those they sought to desecrate, or face judgment from the Galactic Council. Most choose to stay. There's something about working among these ships, learning their histories. It changes people. She turned to Commander Tixtal, her expression softening. This is why we revealed the Void Seeker's presence to you now. The galaxy grows more dangerous. We need allies who understand what we protect here, not just ships and technology, but the very concept of reverence itself. Tixtal watched as the last Karax ship was secured, its crew being led into the station under guard. You know more about my lost crew than I ever learned, he said quietly. You've honored them in ways I could not. Whatever aid the Xeraxian Exploration Force can provide, you have it. Good, Rise replied, turning back to the tactical displays. Because that was just the first wave. Our long-range sensors show 3 more Karax battle groups approaching from different vectors. They're testing our defenses, learning our capabilities. And they're not the only ones who covet what we protect. The command center's main screen shifted to show hundreds of incoming ships, representing a dozen different scavenger factions. The MothYard's automated defenses were already adjusting, preparing for a battle that would dwarf the previous skirmish. Welcome to the true purpose of Gateway Station, Commander, Rice said, her voice carrying the weight of centuries of vigilance. This is where we prove that humanity's determination to remember is matched only by our resolve to protect. Shall we show them why the dead of 1,000 worlds chose us as their guardians? As Gateway Station's defenses engaged the incoming Karax battle groups, Keeper Rise led Commander Tixtal and his observers deep into the heart of the station. Emergency lighting cast long shadows through corridors that grew progressively narrower, until they reached a circular chamber unlike anything the Ziraxians had seen before. The walls were lined with neural interfaces, thousands of them, each connected to a human keeper in deep meditation. Holographic displays showed fragments of memories flowing between the keepers and the vast database of ship records, creating an ethereal dance of light and information. "This is the memory core," Rise explained, her voice barely above a whisper. "Every keeper spends 4 hours a day here, connecting directly with the histories we preserve. We don't just store information about the ships and their crews, we experience it." A young keeper sat up suddenly from his interface, tears streaming down his face. Medical staff rushed to his side, but he waved them away. "Inks the colony ship," he reported hoarsely. "Final moments before quantum storm impact. They sang to their children until the end." "The price of perfect memory," Rice said, watching the keeper being helped from his station, "is that we carry every loss, every sacrifice, every final moment. We feel what they felt. We remember as if we were there." First observer Kelleria's sensor arrays quivered. "How do you bear it?" "We share the load. No keeper carries these memories alone." Rise touched a neural interface, and her eyes grew distant. "Right now, I hold the final log of the Arcturian flagship Dawn's Promise. I know how it feels to give the order that saves a civilization at the cost of your own life. I remember the taste of their victory wine, shared one last time before the end." The station shuddered as another wave of Karax ships engaged their defenses, but in the memory core, the keepers remained focused, undisturbed by the battle raging above. "Your defense platforms," second observer Mintax noted. "They draw on these memories, don't they? The tactics you use are born from the combined experience of every naval commander whose ship rests in our care," Rice confirmed. "We learn from their victories and their defeats. Each battle they fought teaches us how to protect their final resting place." She led them to a special section of the core, where a single keeper sat before multiple interfaces. The human's hair had gone completely white, and their hands trembled slightly as they processed the flood of information. "Master Keeper Rashid," Rice said softly. "He's been with us for 60 years, carries more memories than anyone else in the station. The neural load is significant." Rashid turned to them, his eyes somehow both ancient and bright. "The Void Seeker," he said, looking directly at Tixtal. "I remember them. Would you like to hear their final song?" Before Tixtal could respond, another alarm blared through the station. "Keeper Rise to Command Center," the AI announced. "The Karax have breached our outer defensive line. They're targeting the Temporal Dynasty section." Reyes's expression hardened. "The oldest ships in our care, the most advanced technology." She turned to the Ziraxian delegation. "Commander, I need to coordinate our defense, but Master Rashid can show you what you came to see." As she hurried from the chamber, Rashid gestured for Tixtal to sit beside him. "Your crew faced the quantum storms with courage," he said, his voice carrying echoes of ancient Ziraxian harmonics. "They knew they couldn't escape, so they focused on preserving their ship, and with it, the sensor data that would help others navigate those storms safely." He touched a control, and the neural interface extended crystalline connections designed specifically for Ziraxian physiology. "I can share their memories with you, but I warn you, experiencing final moments is never easy, even when they're filled with purpose." Tixtal looked at his observers, who nodded their support. Then he connected to the interface, and 20 years of uncertainty dissolved into perfect, painful clarity. Through the memory core, he lived his lost crew's final hours. He felt their determination as they realized that they could save future ships by mapping the quantum storms. He experienced their pride in serving the exploration force, their acceptance of their fate, and their hope that their sacrifice would mean something. When the connection ended, Tixtol found his crystalline eyes had frosted over with emotion. "They died as they lived," he said softly. "Exploring, learning, making the void safer for those who would follow." "Yes," Rashid agreed. "And now you understand why we fight so hard to protect this place. Each ship in our care carries such stories. Each crew gave something to the future. We preserve these vessels not just to honor their memory, but to ensure their sacrifices continue to guide and protect others." Through the station's walls, they could hear the distant thunder of battle. The Karaks were pushing harder now, determined to claim the ancient knowledge stored in the temporal dynasty ships. But in the memory core, surrounded by the accumulated wisdom and sacrifice of countless species, the noise seemed to fade into insignificance. "We have a saying here in the MothYard," Rashid said, his weathered hands steady now as they danced across the interface controls. "As long as we remember, no one truly dies. Their courage becomes our courage. Their wisdom becomes our wisdom. Their stories become our stories." He smiled gently at Tixtol. "And now, Commander, your lost crew's story has become part of humanity's story too. We will carry them forward until the stars themselves grow dark." The battle for the MothYard reached its crescendo as Commander Tixtol emerged from the memory core, his consciousness still resonating with the echoes of his lost crew. Keeper Rise met them in the corridor, her uniform showing signs of recent combat. "The Karaks have breached our inner defenses," she reported, leading them swiftly toward the command center. "They've landed boarding parties on several of the temporal dynasty vessels. We need to make a decision, Commander. A final one." The command center's displays showed the full scope of the assault. Dozens of Karak ships had penetrated the MothYard's outer rings, weaving between the ancient vessels like predators. Human defense platforms fought back with tactics drawn from 1,000 civilizations, but the sheer number of attackers was overwhelming their coordinated response. "Show me the Stellar Seeker's position," Tixtol commanded. The display shifted, revealing his fleet maintaining their original formation at the system's edge. "Open a channel." "This is Commander Tixtol," he broadcast, his voice carrying the harmonic overtones of absolute authority. "By my authority as ranking officer of the Xeraxian Exploration Force, I hereby declare this system under joint protection. All Xeraxian vessels, Battle Formation Omega-7. Engage the intruders." The Stellar Seeker and its 11 companion ships surged forward, their crystalline hulls refracting the light of battle. They moved with precision through the vast field of memorial ships, their weapons carefully calibrated to avoid damaging the sacred vessels they now helped protect. The Karaks weren't expecting this, Rides observed as the Xeraxian ships cut through the invaders' formations. "They thought you were neutral observers." "We were," Tixtol agreed, watching his fleet coordinate with the human defense platforms. "Until we understood. This isn't just your sanctuary. It belongs to all of us. Every species that ever lost a ship to the void. Every crew that sacrificed themselves for something greater." The tide of battle shifted. Caught between the MothYard's defensive systems and the Xeraxian fleet's unexpected intervention, the Karaks forces began to fragment. Some fled immediately, while others fought with increasing desperation. "They're making a final push for the temporal dynasty section," reported a human tactical officer. 3 heavy cruisers, moving fast. Reyes's hands flew over the command console, but her expression was grim. "Our platforms are too scattered. We can't intercept them all." "Then it's time to wake the Guardians," came a quiet voice. Master Keeper Rashid had entered the command center, his aged frame somehow straighter, more resolute. "Keeper Rise, authorize Protocol Omega." Her eyes widened. "Are you certain?" "The power requirements. Air justified," he finished. "What better use for the temporal dynasty's final gift than to protect their own legacy?" Rise nodded and pressed her hand to a biometric scanner. "Gateway Station I. Authorize Protocol Omega." Authorization Raise 7 Delta 9. The space around the temporal dynasty ships shimmed like heat waves over desert sand. Time itself seemed to hiccup, and suddenly the Carax cruisers found themselves facing something impossible. The ghostly forms of the very ships they had come to plunder, restored to their prime by temporal manipulation. The temporal dynasty understood time differently than we do. Rashid explained as the phantom ships engaged their attackers. Their vessels don't just rest here. They echo through time, ready to defend themselves if needed. We simply help them remember when they were whole. The Carax cruisers, faced with weapons that had been legendary when their own civilization was young, didn't stand a chance. Within minutes, the battle was over. The remaining invaders fled, leaving their disabled companions to the mercy of the MothYard's defenders. In the silence that followed, Tixtol turned to Keeper Reyes. The Zyraxian Exploration Force requests permanent assignment to the MothYard's defense fleet. We have our own dead to protect now. Granted, she replied with a smile. But there's more, isn't there? Yes. Tixtol's crystalline eyes gleamed. We have outposts across 30 sectors, colonies on 100 worlds. Each has ships they've lost, crews they couldn't save. Let us help bring them home. Let the MothYard grow. It was always meant to, Rashid said softly. Humanity may have been chosen as the primary guardians, but we were never meant to stand alone. Each species that joins us brings new perspectives, new ways of remembering, new methods of protection. Through the command center's windows, they could see the temporal echoes of the dynasty ships fading, returning to their eternal rest. The Stellar Seeker's fleet had begun coordinating with human vessels to secure the disabled Carax ships, and in the distance, the Void Seeker hung silently among her sister ships, finally at peace. Look there, Reyes said suddenly, pointing to a new signal at the system's edge. Another ship, arriving on its own power. Registry. It's from a species we've never encountered before. Then let us welcome them, Tixtol said, and show them what it means to be remembered. The MothYard's endless dance of ships continued, each vessel a story, each crew a lesson in courage and sacrifice. And in the heart of Gateway Station, the Keepers prepared to add new memories to their eternal vigil, human and Zyraxian together, guardians of the galaxy's greatest legacy. For in the vast darkness between the stars, they had created something unprecedented, a place where the past was never forgotten, where sacrifice was honored, and where the light of remembrance would shine forever, guiding future generations through the endless void.